My unfamiliar arranged marriage husband suddenly texted me, "Busy?" Thinking it was a colleague asking about work progress, I replied, "Yeah." The other end fell silent. Half an hour later, the man who had disappeared for half a year because he hated me showed up at my doorstep. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice trembling as he practically begged, "Did you forget about me?" Me, what? I ate some barbecue and ended up with acute gastroenteritis, forcing me to stay in the hospital for 5 days. On the day I was discharged and went home, my colleague Karen sent me a few files. A few days ago, the new CEO took office and wasn't very satisfied with the project our team was working on, demanding major revisions. Since I took 5 days off, my part hasn't made any progress. I need to review the materials tonight and come up with a revision plan. After explaining the tasks, Karen added a few more words. The new CEO is a total hottie. You lucky single girl, getting to feast your eyes. But he's very serious about his work and can be quite harsh when scolding people. Everyone in our team has been scolded by him during meetings, so make sure to revise your work carefully. At first, all the single girls in the team were eager to catch his attention, but after being scolded, they all settled down. Oh, by the way, if you have any issues with the revisions, feel free to call me anytime. Let's try to finish everything today. I'm not really interested in this new CEO, I'm more concerned about my absence affecting the team's progress. So I quickly downloaded the file and turned on my computer to carefully study the materials Karen had sent me. Upon opening them, I realized that major revisions were required, rendering all our previous progress obsolete. The ideas we had proposed were now unusable. I needed to re-examine the background investigation materials from scratch. To make matters worse, the new materials included some content in a foreign language, which left me scratching my head in frustration. The more I looked at it, the more anxious I became. I'm not sure how long I'd been reading, but by the time I noticed, it was already dark outside. My stomach was growling with hunger, so I picked up my phone to order myself a stomach-friendly dinner. Trying to decide what to eat on a food delivery app when suddenly a message popped up. Busy? Thinking it was a colleague checking on my work progress, I opened the message and replied in the chat window, "Yeah. But almost done." After waiting a while with no response from Karen, I switched back to ordering my meal. In the end, I settled on a dish of scrambled eggs with beef over rice. Then I put my phone down and went back to reviewing materials while drafting a proposal. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang, probably my food delivery had arrived. I got up to answer the door. Just as I cracked it open slightly, a force from outside forcefully pushed it wide open. And there I was, face to face with the person outside. Wait, where's my food? My hands lay emptily open as I stared somewhat dazedly at the man before me. Are food delivery guys this formal these days? Wearing a suit and all? Those in the know would see I'd ordered food, those unaware might think I was genuinely hungry and had ordered a male model. I found it odd and sized up the man standing before me from head to toe. He didn't look like someone delivering my takeout. The man's shirt was tucked tightly into his dress pants, outlining a slender waist, with 3 buttons undone to reveal quite a sight on his chest. Paired with his face, handsome to the point of being unfair. I couldn't help but sneak several more glances at him and actually found him somewhat familiar. But when I thought about it, that seemed unlikely. He despises me so much, why would he come looking for me on his own? Besides, someone as cold and cutting as Elias was the complete opposite of the pitiful man outside my door, with his red-rimmed eyes as if he'd just cried his heart out and a trembling mouth. Handsome, handsome? I waved my hand in front of his dazed peach blossom eyes and called softly. Hearing this, he snapped back to reality, looked at me, and then peered into my room. I found this person rather strange and grew wary, asking, "Who are you? What do you want?" Suddenly, he lifted his long legs and stepped into my home, leaning in close. His voice trembled as he spoke, almost pleading, "Can you add me too?" I didn't quite catch what he was saying at first. But hearing his voice, I realized one thing. He wasn't just like Elias, he was Elias himself. That arranged marriage partner of mine, we weren't close, and he didn't just dislike me, he outright loathed me. The first time I visited his house, he threw the carefully handcrafted gift I'd prepared straight into the trash. I overheard him telling his friend, "Marry her?" Not a chance. Later, his grandfather left a will stipulating that he could only inherit the family fortune if he was married. That's why he reluctantly agreed to marry me. All for the inheritance. After we got our marriage certificate, he simply vanished. We haven't even seen each other once in the past 6 months. Elias has a very distinct and pleasant voice, a deep, husky, smoky tone with a hint of lazy arrogance in his speech. It's unmistakable. Upon realizing this fact, I impatiently glared at him, wanting to push him out and shut the door. He hates me, so I won't like him either. Seeing this, he reacted quickly, walking back into the room while casually hooking the doorknob with his hand, slamming the door shut with a bang. He scanned the room, as if checking for any other people. After confirming there was no one else, he peeled off the pitiful mask he had worn before and reassumed his usual aloof and indifferent demeanor. Placing both hands on the wall, he trapped me within his arms, his low, husky voice carrying a probing weight. "Where is he?" Talk, wife. What person?" I frowned in even greater confusion and shot the question back at him. He casually curled his lips into a smirk and lightly nipped at my neck. A tingling pain rushed over me, and I instinctively shrank back, but he pressed closer relentlessly. He was too close, I could clearly feel the scorching heat of his chest. "Did you forget about me?" As he spoke, I clearly saw his gritted teeth. In that instant, I realized, I must have replied to the wrong message. That I'm busy just now was meant for the man before me. Before I could process why he suddenly messaged me, I patiently explained everything to him in detail, but he still seemed only half convinced. After a long silence, he still sounded uneasy. "Really? You're not lying to me? Then why did you open the door without asking anything earlier?" "I thought my food delivery had arrived." "There's really no man here?" "If you think you're a man, then take it." Elias smiled, holding a cigarette between his lips. "Honey, do you need a man or not?" His words were full of undeniable temptation. I looked at him coldly, feeling that he was acting oddly tonight. Just after we got married, his family kept pressuring us to have a child, but he flatly refused. Not only did he not touch me, but he also shamelessly insisted on sleeping in separate rooms. After his grandfather found out, he was so angry that he subjected him to family discipline. By the end of it, I could hardly bear to watch. That very night, covered in wounds, he moved out of our marital home. I'd been living on my own this whole time. Every month, he would dutifully transfer money into my account, but I never touched a single penny, afraid he might demand it all back if we ever divorced. Now, suddenly, he's messaging me, suddenly returning, and even calling me wife every other word. It's so out of character. Unnecessary. Now that you know I didn't do anything to betray you, you can leave with peace of mind. I'm legally yours, I'm not leaving. He lowered his head to bury his face in the crook of my neck, leaving a few damp kisses as his scorching breath brushed against my ear. The slight ticklish sensation made me instinctively shrink back. He wrapped one arm around my waist and lifted me up, disregarding my resistance. He pecked lightly at the corner of my lips several times while his hands roamed restlessly, as if testing my limits. His teasing left my legs weak and my consciousness hazy, with only my hands putting up unconscious resistance. Suddenly remembering the unfinished proposal revisions, I snapped back to complete awareness. She raised her leg and aimed a swift kick at Elias's sensitive spot, causing him to grimace in pain before groaning through clenched teeth, "Hiss, that hurts." Dangling from him, I patted his cheek lightly and teased, "Isn't that what boys are for, to be given a little pain?" Elias's grip around my waist tightened as his voice dropped to a dangerously low and icy tone. "Daphne, you've become quite naughty." He escalated immediately. Just as I was about to stop him, the doorbell suddenly rang. Elias snapped impatiently toward the entrance, "Leave the takeout at the door." After speaking, he leaned in again trying to kiss me. But just then, a deep middle-aged male voice sounded from the doorway, "What delivery? Who are you, and why are you in my daughter's home?" It was my dad's voice. I quickly signaled Elias to put me down. My dad knew the code to my smart lock. We were right by the entrance, so we could clearly hear him entering the password. By the time my dad opened the door and came inside, he saw Elias and me sitting properly at the dining table. I was flipping through documents working on a proposal while he gave suggestions and guidance beside me. When my dad saw Elias, he was visibly stunned, then started nodding and bowing. "Elias? What are you doing here?" Elias stood up and nodded at my father. "Daphne is having some issues at work, so I came back to help." "Bullshit." I silently cursed him for lying without even thinking. "Oh, I see. Well, thank you, Elias. It's really too much trouble for you to help with such a small matter." "Just doing what I should," Elias replied calmly. I feel saddened by my father's humble attitude. Our family used to be on equal footing with the Elias family, but after my father's failed investment, we were left heavily in debt and gradually disappeared from high society. Not wanting me to suffer alongside him, my father pleaded with his old friend, Elias's grandfather, to take me into their household. I was 18 that year. It was only after arriving at the Elias residence that I learned our grandfathers had arranged a child betrothal between Elias and me when we were born. His grandfather came to consult my opinion. By then, the disparity in our family circumstances was too great, and Elias and I had barely met 2 or 3 times as children. We were practically strangers. Such verbal childhood betrothals aren't worth taking seriously. Worried his family might hesitate to mention it for fear of hurting my pride, I took the initiative. "Grandpa, Elias and I have no feelings for each other. Past promises shouldn't bind us now. I think we should cancel this arranged engagement. Besides, Elias later stated clearly he would never marry me." When my father found out, he assumed Elias's family cancelled because mine had declined. He blamed himself deeply for this. That's why after Elias and I married, my father behaved with almost groveling deference toward Elias's family, terrified they might neglect or mistreat me. Upon learning that Elias had moved out of the marital home, he was both furious and heartbroken. He even considered bringing me back home for a while. At the thought of this, a surge of bittersweet emotion welled up in my heart. Sniffling, I asked my dad, "Dad, what brings you all the way here?" Hearing my words, my dad immediately raised the food container he was holding in his right hand. "Didn't you get hospitalized these past few days with gastroenteritis? I was worried you wouldn't eat properly, so I made your favorite porridge." My dad opened the lunchbox on the table, revealing my favorite pork rib porridge inside. The savory aroma of the bone broth filled the air, and with my stomach growling from hunger, my appetite soared. Taking the spoon my father handed me, I buried my head and started eating voraciously. Slow down, girl, no one's rushing you. You should eat less takeout, it's neither nutritious nor healthy. It's not a solution that you can't cook. Once Dad pays off the debts, I'll come take care of you." As he spoke, my father patted my head with a look of deep affection in his eyes. Elias, sitting nearby, watched quietly without saying a word. After I finished the porridge, my father cleaned up and prepared to leave. Before going, he glanced worriedly at Elias sitting on the sofa and asked me quietly at the door, "Has he ever mistreated you?" I didn't want my father to worry, so I smiled and shook my head, saying, "No, he treats me very well." Only then did my father leave with peace of mind. "I'm done. Come take a look." After closing the door, Elias's casual voice drifted over. I was stunned. In the time it took me to eat a bowl of porridge, he had finished the proposal for me? Half in doubt, I took the laptop and glanced at it, only to realize he had indeed completed the entire thing for me. Faced with my astonished gaze, he simply offered a brief explanation. "I've been following this project. I know exactly what it needs, and this is the best approach for your part." His words immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. Could he possibly be the newly appointed CEO Karen mentioned? Don't forget about tomorrow's presentation. After saying this, he stood up, still looking at me with that cold expression. By the time I processed the information and realized what had happened, he was already gone. During the next day's meeting, when it was my turn to present, the conference room door swung open. Just as the supervisor in the front row was about to stand up, Elias paid him no attention and immediately took a seat, his gaze fixed on my position. At first, I didn't react while standing at the front, until I saw him casually flipping through my notebook. My heart skipped a beat as an ominous feeling settled in. Oh no 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 no. It's over. This notebook for meeting minutes doesn't contain much related to actual meetings at all. It's full of all sorts of strange things I scribbled while zoning out during work. Many of them are complaints about him, and there are even mosaic-rated scenes using him as the prototype. What are you staring at? Get started. He rapped his knuckles sharply against the desk, tilting his chin at me. His tone was cold, his eyes never leaving the notebook. I grew even more nervous. The train of thought I had so carefully organized suddenly derailed, and my speech became halting. I stumbled through the presentation of my proposal, breaking out in a cold sweat. Nearly everyone in the room had been on the receiving end of Elias's verbal lashings before. Given my dismal performance, they had already foreseen my inevitable downfall. The meeting room was so silent you could hear a pin drop. No one dared breathe too loudly. All eyes were on Elias, waiting for his response. He was still flipping through my notebook with apparent relish. After what felt like an eternity, he finally looked up, a faint smile curling at the corners of his lips. He seemed to be in an unusually good mood. Glancing at the others present, he leaned back in his chair, his demeanor relaxed and lazy. There wasn't a trace of anger on his face. I was quite surprised. Given his temperament and what he had seen, he should have been furious. Reading the mood, the supervisor cautiously ventured, "President, do you have any instructions regarding this proposal?" "Oh? Instructions? No. She has a lovely voice." The supervisor's face turned green then white, his lips opening and closing, but in the end, he didn't say a word. "Oh no, she explained it very well, and I'm quite satisfied with the proposal. But I'd like to ask, Daphne, what inspired this proposal's concept?" "How would I know? Wasn't this proposal written by you?" After hesitating for a while, I honestly replied, "It was inspired by my family." He seemed pleased with that answer, the smile on his lips deepening, and showed no intention of pressing further. "Then someone in your family must be quite remarkable," he said. His words carried hidden meanings, trying to cover up what was actually obvious. The way my colleagues looked at me instantly changed. I maintained a composed smile and said, "Thank you for the compliment, President." The meeting hadn't even ended yet when he left early. All my colleagues secretly sighed in relief. Returning to my workstation, I opened my phone only to find the department's small group chat buzzing with excitement. It was what they had been discussing during my presentation. OMG, why did the president suddenly show up? Didn't he say he had no time to attend the meeting? My heart almost stopped when he came in. I nearly stood up to bow and apologize to him. "Ha ha ha, you're being ridiculous. The CEO is flipping through Daphne's notebook. What did he see? Why is he grinning like a fool? If there's anything in that notebook bad-mouthing the CEO, I might as well drop dead on the spot. Daphne hasn't been around for a while. Today was her first time seeing the CEO, how could she possibly curse at him?" Daphne's face turned completely pale, the poor girl was so nervous she broke out in a cold sweat. "It's over, folks. Daphne's report, she's definitely getting scolded. My heart aches for her, sigh. I don't think he'll get scolded. The CEO doesn't look angry at all, in fact, he seems quite happy. He didn't get scolded. Has the CEO been possessed or something? His tone actually sounds a bit doting. He said Daphne has a nice voice, ha ha ha. I've never seen him praise anyone before, but this time he even complimented Daphne's husband. I'm shocked. When did Daphne get married? She must be making it up. She's always been single, where would a husband come from? That person might not necessarily be her husband anyway. Why did the CEO take Daphne's notebook when he left? Was there something in it that interested him? My colleagues enthusiastically discussed over 100 messages. As I scrolled down to read them, I had already exhausted all my strength and options by the time I reached this last one. Yes, he just took my notebook like that. There's stuff in there that can't be seen by others. Ah. As I was getting ready to leave work, I received a message from Elias, "Don't leave after work." Those words hit me like dreadful news. I was so frantic that I started scratching my head in distress. Sitting on pins and needles until the end of the workday, after my colleagues had all left one by one, I was the only one left anxiously waiting for Elias. When the office was completely empty, he leisurely emerged from the CEO's office. "Very obedient, aren't you? Told you not to leave, and you actually stayed. Dare I leave, you think? Come back to the old house with me, let's have a meal with them." He waved at me and strode ahead on his long legs. When he saw that I hadn't caught up, he stopped again. As I caught up to him, he turned his head and smiled faintly. "Not bad writing," he said. Oh my God. He actually read everything. I was on the verge of tears, nervously rubbing my shirt sleeves to ease my overwhelming embarrassment. Elias seemed to be in a good mood, even humming a little tune in the car. I secretly let out a sigh of relief, judging by his cheerful demeanor. He probably wasn't planning to hold it against me. When we arrived at Elias's home, his grandparents were delighted to see us returning together and eagerly pulled me aside to chat. During dinner, the food was so delicious that I couldn't help but go back for seconds, twice. On my third trip back for more food, Elias leaned on the back of my chair and whispered to me, "Do you like it that much?" Holding my bowl, I felt a little embarrassed. Licking my lips, I glanced at him and answered honestly, "Gracie's cooking is just too delicious." I couldn't help eating a bit more. He nodded with a slight smile. The next second, he called Gracie over and said to his parents, "Mom, Dad, I'd like Gracie to come cook for Daphne and me at our place. Would you mind?" There are many housekeepers in Elias's family who are responsible for cooking, so one less makes no difference. His parents readily agreed. I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye and saw that he remained calm and continued eating. Secretly, I was surprised that he remembered what my father had said to me that day. I lowered my head and started eating, recalling the early days of our marriage when Elias didn't like too many people in the house. So, we didn't bring any housekeepers, only arranging for them to come in at fixed times to cook and clean. Later, when he moved out and my work became busier, I ended up eating almost all my meals outside, so eventually, the housekeeper stopped coming altogether. After dinner, Elias's mother pulled me aside and asked, "Why hasn't there been any movement in your belly yet? It's been over half a year since you got married." I felt a bit helpless. Doesn't she have any idea why I haven't conceived? Elias hasn't come back, I could only tell the truth. It wasn't my problem anyway. I've already talked to him. I told him you two need to get pregnant soon so you'll have a better chance when dividing the family assets. He promised he'd come back. You too, someone has to take the initiative. Once you have a child, our family will naturally treat you well. I recalled his sudden visit last time, with all those ambiguous little gestures as soon as he entered. So unusual, it turns out he came back to complete a mission. I forced a smile and responded, "We'll do our best." In the evening, when Elias dropped me off at the underground parking garage of my community, I got out of the car and, just before closing the door, saw him resting one hand on the steering wheel, making no move to unbuckle his seatbelt, just silently watching me. She casually asked, "Aren't you coming home again tonight?" He turned to look at me, his eyes dark and deep, and softly replied, "I am." With that, he quickly unbuckled his seatbelt and got out of the car. There happened to be a newly delivered package at the doorstep. After entering, I opened it and found it was the new fitness tracker I had ordered. Being not fond of exercise, my physical fitness is quite average, and I often end up in the hospital every now and then. During the 5 days I was hospitalized for gastroenteritis, deeply regretting my past choices, I made up my mind to start working out. Elias went to take a shower, and I fiddled with the fitness tracker while referring to the manual. By the time he came out, he had somehow taken a seat beside me without my noticing. I was still struggling to connect the tracker to my phone via Bluetooth. Seeing my frustration, Elias chuckled softly and said, "Did a donkey kick your little brain? Can't even figure this out." After speaking, ignoring the dramatic roll of my eyes, she reached out and took the wristband from my hand, putting it on her own wrist, then tried to connect it for me. I leaned in beside her to watch, completely unaware that the distance between us had become far too close. Her arm pressed against my chest through the thin fabric of the shirt, a proximity that allowed our body heat to mingle. Seeing that the connection was successful, I stepped forward to check the data displayed on the wristband. To my surprise, it showed a heart rate too high alert, asking whether I was in an active state. The real-time monitoring showed a heart rate of 120 beats per minute. How could Elias's heart rate be so fast in this condition? I was wondering if the wristband was malfunctioning when I suddenly felt an intense gaze hovering over my head. I glanced up and met Elias's deep, scorching gaze. His Adam's apple bobbed several times, and his cheeks and ears were unusually flushed. I asked in confusion, "What's wrong with you?" After asking, I noticed his gaze was fixed on a certain part of me. Following his line of sight downward, I realized that one of my shirt buttons had come undone without me noticing. Out of the 6 buttons, 3 had come undone. With just a slight lean, most of what was inside became visible, and it was right against his arm. When I realized what had happened, my face flushed red. I quickly distanced myself, frantically tightening my shirt and not daring to look up at him. The bracelet on his wrist kept beeping with alerts for high heart rate, which had already climbed to 130 beats per minute. "Why don't you take off the bracelet?" Elias's voice was unusually hoarse, all his usual arrogance gone, as if caught in the same awkward situation as me. He wasn't even moving smoothly when taking off the bracelet. Could he be as shy as me? And still having his first time too? That night, after taking a shower and lying in bed, I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. The scene kept replaying in my mind, and recalling that he'd seen the short snippets I'd written in my notebook made my face burn so hot I couldn't resist turning on the air conditioning. I drifted in and out of sleep in the early hours, half awake when I felt the bed dip slightly as a faint scent of men's shampoo wafted over from beside me. I lay there stiffly, not daring to move. Elias settled beside me, his even breathing indicating he'd already fallen asleep. Dazed for a moment, it dawned on me, he must have entered the wrong room. Just as I reached out to tap him awake, he rolled over toward me and pulled me into his arms like a stuffed toy, drawing me against his chest. I leaned against his firm chest, able to catch the faint scent of his shower gel, my favorite freesia fragrance. Forget it, being held by him was actually quite comfortable, so I decided not to wake him. Not only did I not wake him, but I even rested my hand on him. As I touched, my actions grew bolder, losing all sense of restraint in the dark, venturing further down. By the time I snapped out of it, I was so startled that I quickly yanked my hand back. My heart raced like it was about to burst out of my throat, so I obediently closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Daphne didn't notice at all that the man above her had long opened his eyes. Bathed in the moonlight streaming through the window, he was staring intently down at the figure in his arms. Restraint and self-control were truly unbearable. The bathroom light stayed on all night. When I woke up the next morning, Elias was no longer by my side, having left at some unknown hour. Before heading out to work, I couldn't help but ask him, "Elias, can I have my meeting notebook back?" He had already stepped out the door when he heard my words and retraced his steps. Turning around, he leaned against the door, crossing his arms. His voice sounded muffled, with a slightly nasal tone, as if he had a cold. "First, at home, you should call me husband. Second, I haven't finished reading the meeting minutes yet." Frowning in frustration, I scratched my head. It was uncomfortable having a weakness in someone else's hands. Silently planning in my mind, I decided that if he wouldn't give it to me, I'd just take it myself. I was restless at work for quite some time, and when I saw the intern frowning over a document, I asked her if she was having any trouble. She hesitated, saying, "Karen asked me to deliver this document to the CEO, but I'm afraid." Just when I was struggling to find an excuse to go to his office. Without hesitation, I took the file from the intern and said, "I'll take it to him." At that moment, my image in the little sister's eyes instantly became grand. "Elias, you truly are an unlikable auto-insult machine." I knocked on his door with the documents in hand, already prepared for his disparaging remarks. Instead, I saw the man with his hand supporting his forehead, his eyes drooping, his lips pale, and looking rather lethargic. Did he not sleep well last night? It seemed like he could fall asleep any second. When he saw me come in, he raised his head and followed my movements with his gaze. As I approached, I noticed that the trash bin beside him was full of tissues. "Did you catch a cold?" He remained silent, nodding slightly, then propped his forehead and sniffled. His frail appearance was pitiful to behold. I couldn't help but frown. "It seems quite serious. Why haven't you gone to the hospital?" Elias lifted his gaze to me, his lips parting as he reached out to take my hand. Just before our fingers touched, a knock came at the door. "Come in," he managed to croak out, his voice muffled. A muffled and deep nasal tone, seemingly wrapped in heavy fabric, sounded with great effort. How did such a severe cold come on so suddenly? A male colleague walked in through the door, carrying a document for Elias to review and sign. We usually get along quite well, and during the gap while Elias was reading the document, he began speaking to me softly. "Daphne, are you here to report on your work?" "MHM." I pressed my lips together and nodded slightly. "Your previous proposal was excellent. I'd love to learn from you when there's a chance." "No problem. Your team's ideas are also very innovative. Let's exchange thoughts when we get the chance." Elias quickly reviewed and signed it before tossing the document in front of his male colleague, irritably waving him out. The male colleague picked up on the boss's mood and wisely kept quiet, giving me a wave and silently mouthing goodbye. After the door was closed from the outside, an expression of gloom settled over Elias's extremely pale face. Seeing this look on him, I suddenly found myself at a loss for words to ask for my notebook back. Forced to feign concern, I asked, "Are you all right, President? You spoke to him more than you did to me just now." "I'm not happy about that." "Seriously? That's what this is about." The corner of my mouth twitched uncontrollably, and I was momentarily speechless. Even in this state, he's still nitpicking over such trivial matters. He turned his head away, leaving me with a resentful back view. Feeling helpless, I went to pour a cup of hot water and placed it in front of him. I tried to negotiate and reason with him, softening my voice as I asked with concern again, "How did you suddenly catch such a bad cold? Weren't you fine just yesterday?" "Maybe because I took a cold shower last night. But the water heater at home isn't broken." "Is there something wrong or on his mind?" On a chilly late autumn night, he actually took a cold shower. In such a listless state, he couldn't focus on work properly, so I asked, "How about going to the hospital?" Only when he went to the hospital did I get the chance to retrieve my notebook. "I don't want to go by myself." "I'll go with you." "Okay." After speaking, he immediately got up and obediently went to take his coat from the hanger to put on. While his back was turned to me, I quickly snatched my meeting notebook from the table. He went out to contact his assistant to drive, and I hurriedly grabbed the notebook and stuffed it into my bag at lightning speed. After completing this series of actions, I let out a long sigh of relief, secretly rejoicing that he hadn't noticed anything. Accompanying Elias to the hospital, in the VIP ward, he leaned back on the sofa with his eyes closed, his forehead covered in cold sweat. He seemed to be developing a fever. I reached over to feel his forehead and found it alarmingly hot. After taking his temperature, the nurse came to administer an IV drip, but he wouldn't let go of my hand while getting the injection. The nurse stood by and couldn't help teasing, "You two have such a wonderful relationship." I blushed and immediately tried to break free from his grip, but he held on too tightly. I couldn't pry his hand away. As our hands intertwined, the wedding rings on our fingers collided, locking together like adversaries in a stalemate. Sensing the brush of metal against metal, we silently turned to each other, our gazes interweaving with unspoken words. Yet in the end, we said nothing, merely averted our eyes in quiet understanding. Elias, let go. Wife, please don't go. Stay with me. Pitifully begging. I used my free hand to gently stroke his face to comfort him, then bent down and whispered to him, I'm not leaving, let's get the shot properly, okay? He pressed his lips tightly together, nodded obediently at me, and let go of my hand. He looked just like a family dog that had been hurt outside, coming home and wagging its tail for sympathy. I started to chuckle discreetly. Taking advantage of his closed eyes while resting after the shot, I went to the bathroom and took out the notebook from my bag. I wanted to see how much longer the things I had written before could keep me going. But as soon as I opened the first page, I was shocked. Elias actually wrote a reply under my rambling. He moved out of the marital home without a word today. The house feels so empty now. The man's handwriting was elegant and bold, writing, I'm sorry, dear. I know you don't like me, and I can sense that you feel uncomfortable around me, so I moved out first to give you some freedom. I didn't particularly like him from the start, but I didn't dislike him either. I thought since we were married, we should at least try to live together properly. But he just moved out on his own. What's the point of even trying now? I pouted and flipped to the next page. While tidying up the room today, I noticed he has a lot of suits, but they all look the same. I don't get it. Do you like it, honey? If you do, I'll wear it for you every day. If you don't like the same style, I can buy something else. Had lunch with a colleague today, and she wanted to switch her bag. Her husband immediately brought her a new one. Ugh, another day of envying someone else's relationship. Honey, I'm sorry. Actually, if you called and made requests, I'd fulfill them too. But you've never called me, sobs. With how you act, I'm even scared to get close to you, let alone call and make demands. Am I not afraid for my life? Reading this, I silently complained about him in my mind and continued flipping through. Today Karen said she had a fight with her husband, and the two of them were physically and mentally exhausted from the argument. Seeing her like that, I felt a little relieved that I wouldn't face such problems since that man doesn't even come home, hee. Not hee. I used to like him a lot, but after finding out he didn't want to marry me, I've started letting go. I often forget I'm even married. Hopefully, he won't come back, ha ha ha. Honey, I'm your husband. Honey, I'm your husband. Honey, I'm your husband. His mom called again, pressuring me about having a baby. Ugh, is this something I can just decide to do on a whim? Honey, do you want a baby? If you want one, I'm ready anytime. If you don't, then we won't have one. The grilled meat rice bowl at lunch today was so delicious. I know how to make it. Next time, I'll cook it for you. What a lucky egg I am. Receiving beautiful flowers on both Valentine's Day and Qixi Festival. Though no one celebrates the holiday with me, getting flowers makes me happy enough. Silly, those flowers are from me, your husband. How come the director hasn't finished talking yet? I'm so sleepy. Come lie in my arms. The project is finally done. So happy. Honey, you're amazing. As I flipped to the later pages, the tone started to take an unexpected turn. There was a period when my creative urge exploded, and as I wrote, I began to venture into edgier territory. Among all the men I've encountered, Elias was the most handsome and exuded the strongest sexual tension. Since he'd never know anyway, I ended up writing several uncensored pages using him as the prototype, without even changing his name. Amidst the dense black text, I spotted his corrections in red ink, meticulously written like a professor revising a thesis. This place looks nice, we should try it. Well, right, reward. Correction here, I'm not that short. Got me blushing, wifey, what should I do if I want to kiss you right now? I like you so much, so much. Why did you stop writing? Out of inspiration? Do you need me to provide some tonight? Update please. By the time I reached the end, I didn't need a mirror to know how embarrassingly red my face must have turned. What on earth is all this? Elias appears cold and restrained on the surface, but who knew he could be so secretly flirtatious? No wonder he cried so pitifully when I sent him the wrong message that day. At this thought, my mood suddenly brightened immensely. I put the notebook back in my bag, smoothed my hair, wiped the tears from my eyes, and went to find Elias. He was sitting elegantly on the sofa with one leg crossed over the other, his laptop resting on his lap as he attended a meeting. With one hand steadying the laptop and the other hooked up to N4, his slender fingers and prominent veins stood out. The afternoon sunlight bathed him in a glow, making him inexplicably sexy. I stared blankly for a long moment. He seemed to notice my gaze, withdrawing briefly from the meeting to give me a small smile. His lips silently formed the words, "Wait a bit, almost done." I sat down beside him, patiently waiting as he wrapped up the meeting. He ended the call with just a few words, perhaps because of his illness, his demeanor now much softer. His voice was light. "What's up?" I expressionlessly took out my notebook from my bag. After seeing it, he first observed my mood, then his eyes darkened slightly. "Do you like me?" I asked straightforwardly. "Yeah," came the reply, a low and hoarse voice with a slight tremble at the end. "But didn't you say it's impossible to marry me?" "When did I ever say that?" He panicked, suddenly straightening his posture. So I carefully helped him recall it all. He took a deep breath and explained to me, "I overheard you telling Grandpa that you wanted to cancel our arranged marriage. That's why I told my friend I couldn't marry you. If you're unwilling to marry and don't like me, how could I force you? I'm sorry, I saw you throw the gift I gave you into the trash. I thought you hated me. I've been carefully keeping that little bear doll you made for me. The one in the trash bin, I saw it. It was meant for my nephew, but after I gave him a beating, his bear became mine too. Now I have two." The more he spoke, the more frantic he became, terrified I wouldn't listen to his explanation. So that's why his nephew's face was swollen for a while. Turns out he got beaten up. "You have no idea how much I've looked forward to marrying you. I've never forgotten our childhood betrothal, not since the first day I met you. But then I heard you wanted to call it off, and it broke my heart for the longest time. It was my mom who approached you about marrying me to help me fight for the family inheritance, and only then did you agree. Mom wanted me to quickly have a child with you, but I was afraid of scaring you, so I thought about moving out first." "Am I being really stupid like this?" he suddenly asked at the end. I noticed his pale face was flushed with redness. "Yes, you really are stupid," I said, pretending to be disdainful. "That day I asked what you were doing because I heard you were hospitalized, and I wanted to come see you. But the way you spoke scared me so much that I cried the whole way there. So after crying, you decided to give in?" His expression froze, and he nodded. "If you can't beat them, join them." Hands on my hips, I puffed up angrily and said, "You think way too poorly of me. Honey, I'm sorry. But could you please not kick me out of the house, considering I'm a sick patient?" I pondered thoughtfully. "Depends on your performance." A few days later, after Elias fully recovered from his illness, he started getting restless. Afraid of infecting me, he had been obediently sleeping in the guest room all this time. I recalled the day he entered the wrong room and asked, "Haven't you walked into the wrong room lately? You've improved, learning to recognize the way." Elias looked confused. "What wrong room? I've never gone to the wrong one." I nudged him and recounted the incident from that night when he lay down beside me in the middle of the night. Elias drew out a long, drawn-out "oh." Then he said matter-of-factly, "It was what you wrote in your notebook." I'm always soft-hearted. Wasn't I just fulfilling your dream? Then why did you leave later? Because. Suddenly I remembered that he had caught a cold from taking cold showers, and I instantly understood. My heart couldn't stop racing. That night, we reenacted every scene I had written. Between the shared warmth. Elias's voice was deep and pleasant as he said to me, "Look at tonight, the moonlight is so beautiful. Moonlight slipped through the gaps in the curtains, like a thin veil of silver, cascading over his sweat-drenched shoulders. I gasped so hard I could barely speak, only hearing him murmur hoarsely by my ear, his voice scorched like it had been licked by flames. "Daphne, didn't you just say this was only a rehearsal?" I bit his shoulder in protest, but he only chuckled, the laughter mingling with his ragged breaths, pounding against my chest with every exhale. "Liar." He kissed away the tear at the corner of my eye, his voice thick with smug satisfaction yet tinged with something like complaint. "Your script wrote it far more intense than this." I had no strength to argue, letting him hold me tighter as if trying to make up for all the nights we'd missed in the past 6 months. A long while later, the room finally quieted down, leaving only the sound of our heartbeats gradually synchronizing. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his voice muffled, like a child who had finally found his way home. "Darling. Please don't forget me again, okay?" I reached up and ruffled his hair, smiling until my eyes grew warm. "Elias, you're so ugly when you cry." He bit my earlobe indignantly. "Then why were you just holding me and crying?" "Shut up." He chuckled softly, turned over and pressed me into his embrace, kissing my forehead, the tip of my nose, the corner of my lips, like stamping a seal, over and over again. "Daphne," his voice was so gentle as if afraid of shattering something, "thank you for being willing to like me again." I didn't speak, just wrapped my arms around his waist and pressed my face against his chest. There, his heartbeat was steady and strong, as if saying, "I never went far away. It's just that you finally turned around to look at me."